What are some of the unique challenges of building in New York, and what are some of the unique opportunities, especially when it comes to what's ultimately a very political system here?
Well, Chris, you know, I've been developing now in New York for a long time. I have been in business about 35 years, and I've seen the city come to what I call a total change the last 35 years. And some of the challenges in development in city of New York, obviously number one, lack of development sites. We simply don't have land. So our land is the vertical buildings that we develop in city of New York. And when it comes to getting those lands or our plans of these tall buildings, there are factors that come to play. And some of them are constantly zoning and Department of Building and Safety code changes that improves the safety and the lifestyle and the maneuverability of the occupants of the building. So in terms of challenges, getting your project entitled, getting your project permitted, getting your project underway before basically you break ground on a sizable building. It could be anywhere from 2 to 3 years worth of what we call pre-development period. And in fact, there's a major building that we are opening the next 30 days called Sky on the northwest corner of 42nd Street in Manhattan, which is over 1 million square feet. And it's been the largest project that we have developed so far. And it's been, from the time I purchased the first part of the land and assembled the site and got my phase one done and got into getting my entitlements in order, and then economy collapsed and we had to put things on shelf, and we started again and did our plans all over again with new codes and new sets of plans. By next month, it will be 10 years that has taken to put up only one building. And other things, other challenges that I can think about is challenges of city infrastructure that comes to play. So we are doing a major project, a flagship project for our firm, which is called 3 Hudson Boulevard. It's on the west side of Manhattan, and it's a full block on 34 and 35th Street and 11th Avenue. This building is 1.8 million square feet and over 1,000 feet tall. And with that, we need to work hand in hand with not only Department of Buildings, but we also have the train station, MTA, brand new station down below the building, as well as other transportation companies that are involved in the area to make sure that our project moves forward on a timely manner. And so there is challenges, and you take it as it comes day by day, and you try to guess what you need to do prior to construction and cover them all, but you never can cover everything.
Well, what I hear you saying, I think, is that there's too much red tape, right? That it takes too long to build a building.
There is but at this time, we have very, very good administration that has somewhat streamlined the process by letting outside licensed contractors to do some of the inspections, to do some of the sign-offs, to do some of the checking the boxes, if you will. But again, in some areas, there is help that's needed. There are, for example, if you're doing a condominium and the building needs to have each unit has to have its own title, and this has to go through Attorney General's office or other steps that you have to take in order for you to build this project. We could use a little bit of more help, which I think the administration is very, very knowledgeable about the area, and they're trying to improve as the years go on.
But we do need some oversight, right? I mean, it's not as if the ultimate goal is just to get buildings built as quickly as possible, maybe from the developer's perspective, but from the city perspective, there are some things that buildings need to do. Well, let me put it this way. Do you think a building owes the city anything in terms of public space, for example?
Well, I think part of being a efficient developer, a development that's efficient, that's sustainable, and it's friendly to the neighborhood. I think one has to always think of creating areas and a project that's very active, and part of being active, you need outdoor space. But at the same time, again, we do not have sufficient land to have all those activities. So I suspect years to come, where we have maybe 5 to 10% of our roof space being used, I suspect majority of our roof space will be used for recreation purposes. And yes, I think it is very, very important to be environmentally friendly, have either outdoor space to the degree that you can help. And there are many different clever designs that brings the outside inside these days, which are also simply a good design. And I think it should grow that direction.
Are there some ways that you're personally looking into or interested in that incorporate public space throughout a building? You know, you mentioned the roof, and there's obviously the site if you have extra space. But what about, 55 floors up, a public amenity? Could be an indoor park or something.
We do have created several plazas and several roof space and amenity space. But so far the code in New York City has been, the plazas have been given to the public at grade, and anything above the grade, it's not given to the public to travel through the building or use as part of an open public place so far.
So code needs to change before that can happen.
Yeah, code needs to change, but it wouldn't be a bad idea, I think. I think it would be a great idea for some kind of a guideline as to taking people through a asset and giving public some kind of access to enjoy some of the open area spaces other than ground floor with great views, good exposure to the skyline, and all of that would be great.
So without that happening, since you've already mentioned that it's so important to make sure that a building is sensitive to its context, but also economically speaking, you got to build taller and taller in a lot of cases in Manhattan. Is it tougher for a building that's 1,000 feet tall, say, to respond to its condition than a low-rise building? And how should you do that?
I think first we have to divide the question into what type of building you are building. If you are building a residential building and everybody is there to maximize views, which happen to be the special of the day today, in whether you're looking at the water or you're looking at the park or you're looking at some very, very soothing view, that might make sense, and developers are willing to pay part of the price of being inefficient to get up there. So, as you know, every floor has to have its sets of staircases. Every floor has to have sets of elevators for vertical transportation, service elevators, and other things that are necessary to comply with the code. So whether the floor, as you get up there into very tall buildings, whether those floors can afford the net usable footage of space compared to the core of the building that has to stay somewhat the same because of the code, that's the price one has to pay. So if you're really building a 100-story and you're selling it for $5,000 or $10,000 square foot condominium, obviously it pays to do that because you're hiding part of your actual cost into the price.
Well, of course, you can get the return from the rent.
But say if you examine a office building, like 50 or 52 stories on an office building, especially with today's efficiency standards of anybody that wants to occupy office building for office use, it's really 50 or 52 floors. And anything higher, you're cutting into your efficiency. Anything lower, you're leaving some on the table. But that's the area where you need to do. So office buildings design, they tend to behave themselves a little bit more responsibly to become more efficient. Residential buildings, especially for sale residential homes, they seem to stretch the band a little bit because they want to get to higher views.
Well, we certainly see that happening. I
Yes.
mean, in New York, it's kind of
Yes.
that hotbed for that.
Yes.
Is there something that should be done from a public standpoint, design standpoint, from developers? I mean, where does this end? Doesn't it just keep going higher and slimmer and taller and more expensive? And how does that stop? Should it?
I think as long as we have the outside of United States pressure, purchasing, investing, and lending in New York City, be it residential, retail, and commercial, I think this is maybe the beginning of the tallest buildings coming to town in terms of development. Don't forget that we have, compared to the rest of the world, we have some of the best rock profile underground. Right? That's why it's very difficult to build a subway here. It's very difficult to do a foundation in this. And not only we have solid rock compared to some areas in Middle East that there's sand and you have to build a big building and the foundation to hold up the big tower, it's a challenge. So that good also comes with challenges because the water, it's very near the two sides of this island called Manhattan, which is a vertical island in terms of length. It's north to south and not too much east to west. So we are near water. So we do have rock. We go in a little bit too much. We hit water. And those are the challenges and those are the unknowns to any developer that is thinking to build the highest, tallest, and whatever. But we have great technology today. Our structural engineers and our architects at large are very, very sophisticated, perhaps the most sophisticated anywhere in the world, that are designing these buildings that will stay for hundreds of years, I'm sure. And it's nice to see this new array of excitement come around.
So I hear mostly just from you that you think this is a good trend, but I wanted to ask in just the minute or two that we have left, given the theme being global exchanges for this conference,
Yes.
This flow of global capital influencing this flurry of tall development, as you just
Yes.
mentioned, do you see any dangers in that for New York?
I don't see it. I think it's a very, very advantageous thing for New York. You know, everybody, whether you are a college graduate or you are a well-to-do individual or family overseas, they all wish, and is one of your dream events, to live and work in New York City. So that's coming in from not only within United States, but from Europe, from Asia, from Middle East, South America. And in terms of commercial, the rental has been more of the United States within. I know we don't see foreigners coming here and renting office space that much. But capital, there is a huge amount of investment of capital, both in equity and both in debt, coming mainly from Europe and China right now, that really fueling the economy in New York City tremendously, especially on development. And Chris, you know, all these years that I have been in business, with what they're projecting of what's going to happen in 2050 and what New York will be in 2050, if you go back 35 years, which I can, and see that kind of growth and multiply that for the next 35 years, I think we have a great challenge in our hand, and I think we can overcome because we are the center of technology, we are the center of finance, we are center of art and fashion and media right now. It's just that we need to make the transportation aspect, the visitor aspect, where do we have enough hotel rooms, do we have enough service people to service them, do we have enough to make them want to come back again and again as they do every year. And that would be the challenge that I think that we are confronting, which I'm sure we will prevail.